Welcome back to the Mayhem Performance Podcast. This week, we're talking all things training versus testing and how you should use both of those strategically throughout the training year to make sure you're actually getting better at the sport that you love. Today, I have Connor and Jake with me, and we're going to go ahead and dive straight into the conversation. What I want to do is kind of first define the term. So maybe you guys can help me with what is training versus testing, and then we'll talk about actually how do you apply these to your actual progressions.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, when we talk about testing, we're trying to reach the end and find out what the limits are of your actual performance and your ability in something, right? So if that's example, just to isolate one variable would be like max rep unbroken toes to bar. We want to see how many can you do without coming off the bar, right? Or without hitting fatigue or whatever it may be. And so that would be an example of testing, right? And then training would be, all right, let's now try to take some pieces and some parts of the toe to bar. Let's say it's midline flexion. Let's say it's grip strength. We want to isolate those in certain training parameters to try to improve that element of, whatever movement we're trying to work on. Right?
Yeah. I think, Connor, that the CrossFit world kind of has, I don't want to use the word epidemic, but I think it's true, like an epidemic in just doing testing all the time.
Yeah.
And maybe not in the way that we think about it, because I use testing as a way to inform me as a coach on what the athlete needs to get better at. But what I mean by testing for the CrossFit community is it's always just hard CrossFit workouts, and they just kind of try to truly create just like constant variance. But it's really hard to like actually peg down what they need to work on. Yeah. If it's just 15-minute AMRAP, 5 rounds for time, 15-minute AMRAP, chipper every single day of the week.
Yeah. I mean, I think other sports, it's so easy for me. I play basketball, right? So if there's a shot that I didn't make in basketball, I could go and practice that shot and try to replicate it as much as I can. But you can't really do that with CrossFit workouts in the sense of I just keep doing an open workout over and over and over again. I'm not going to really get better at it because there's a science to it, right? So I think the biggest thing, especially with like intermediate athletes, when I bring them in, is like, okay, what are the underlying factors of why you're not good at this workout? So like Jake said, max unbroken toe to bar. I actually test all of my athletes when they first come to me, like their max unbroken gymnastics of everything. So I just want to know where it's at. Even if you think you're good at it, it's like if you can, do 15 toe to bar unbroken, but you think you're a good at toe to bar, I'm like, no, like we need to get that up to at least 40 unbroken, depending on what your goal is, right? So I think that's so important. It's like really assessing, okay, if this is your goal, what do we need to really address first to make you better at that workout? And just doing intense workouts all the time, even with skill, right? It's like, hey, I'm not good at muscle ups. I'm just going to practice muscle ups every day. It's like, your probably pull-ups are at 5 strict unbroken. It's like, let's get your strict pull-ups up to like at least 10, then we can go from there.
Yeah. We were just joking around before we started the cameras about like different stories of how Dom was saying that to get better at snatching when he started CrossFit, he'd just do like Isabel every single day, which now looking back is kind of funny and silly, but like we all kind of did those things when we came into the sport. And I think the goal for us with testing, and Namchev said this well, is to actually identify where the limits are for an athlete. And then as coaches, we use training as a way to actually help improve whatever those limits are in that workout. And if you use that framework as an athlete, you're going to notice that you like have these exponential increases in performance as opposed to just always doing hard CrossFit workouts where you have no clue what's limiting you, because you may never work on the actual underlying limiter if you're just doing hard CrossFit workouts every single day.
Yeah. And I think it's actually also helpful to almost have 2 levels when we talk about testing. So you can look at testing in terms of the open workouts or semifinals workouts or games workouts. Those are tests, right? But from a coaching perspective, especially with performance coaching, we're doing individual coaching. We actually want to test more, not only isolated variables, but sometimes what you get from a test, like let's just take, I'm trying to think of someone give me a quarterfinal, semifinal workout from this past year. Just anyone, doesn't matter.
30-minute AMRAP of
the rope climbs,
1,000 meter row, rope climbs, and toes to bar.
Okay, right. You can have an athlete test that workout, right? But what we really want to know is, well, what was the limiter for you in that workout? And sometimes what can be helpful is to then break those pieces apart. And now we're doing rope climb, or now we're doing toe to bar by itself. Find out which element of it breaks down first, and then that's the part that we can isolate, right? 100%. So it's not just testing the workouts that you see that may be at the games. Those can be helpful, and we need to do that because that's our sport and we have to play it. But then in addition to that, we want to isolate those variables out in a performance setting for individual coaching so that then we can get more fine-tuned and continue to get more.
For sure. Yeah, I love that. I think we should like also mention a test that we do in assessments. Like one of the tests I love doing, especially for intermediate athletes, is 12.3, which is toe to bar, push press, and box jump. So for an intermediate athlete, like if they come back and like, okay, I did 6 rounds of that workout. First thing I'm going to ask them, well, one, I'm going to watch their video and then ask them, hey, what was the limiter? What do you think the limiter was for you? Sometimes they'll say breathing. It wasn't really breathing because their push press max is like 185 and the bar is 115. So it's like, okay, it's most likely that you're not breathing because you're holding your breath because it's so heavy for you. Right. So it's like, okay, if we just got your push press up 50 pounds, you'd probably automatically get better at that workout. And we don't even touch toe to bar and box jump. So I think that's fun. Also, it's like, okay, when we look at these workouts, it's like, there's so many things that we can attack to make you a better athlete. Just not in that workout, but all the way around too.
Totally. I mean, it not only helps them with their push press in that workout, but it probably helped their handstand push-ups and handstand walking and everything. So like we can actually isolate these variables and then improve them across the sport as opposed to it just being improving them in that specific test.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So that, we can kind of circle back to testing a little bit, but I think then let's kind of shift gears and talk about the way we think about training. And I think the most important thing for athletes to understand is that training is meant for progress. We are actually trying to help you improve at the things that actually matter, which usually is like the open, quarterfinals, a competition you want to do. And so we need to have training focused on improving all of those limiters. But the important part is that it's never linear. And I think that that's what frustrates athletes is they get through these progressions that kind of feel like I'm doing the same things and I should be getting better, but some weeks are bad and some weeks are good, especially if you're working on high skill gymnastics like a ring muscle up or chest to bars. So how do you guys deal with those athletes that maybe struggle with like the almost monotony of continuing to work on a specific skill and feel like it takes a long time to actually get better at it?
For sure. Yeah. I love that. A funny question I'll ask my athletes is like, hey, do you want to have fun or do you want to get better?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because a lot of these athletes are coming in and they've just plateaued. Like they've not gotten better at anything. And I think ring muscle ups is a good example because let's say I have a guy right now, JT, he came into me, max unbroken ring muscle ups was 5. And he's like, I want to make the CrossFit games. I'm like, okay, dude, we're going to spend like ample amount of time doing ring muscle ups and just give a simple linear progression. Like every Monday, your first thing you're going to do ring muscle ups. And we're just going to go take 40% of your max unbroken and just keep doing that until you really can't anymore. Right. So I think I did like 2 by all the way up until we got to like maybe 20. Right. And then I was like, okay, the volume there is a lot. So let's now bring it back down. Let's go up to like 3s and just keep doing that until he was like failing 3s. I was like, okay, let's maybe either increase the rest or go back down to 4s and just keep doing that. And that's another thing. Like I never needed to retest his ring muscle ups because now he was doing 7 by 5. And I'm like, you've already PR'd, bro.
In training.
And that's the nice part. It's like, there'll be times where he's like, oh, I'm failing this week. It's like, it's okay. Like we're still making progress. Every week we're touching this movement. And it's fun for him. He's like, bro, I just did more ring muscle ups in one session than I've ever done in my entire life. So it's pretty cool to even for them to see the progress.
Yeah. I think ring muscle ups is a really good example because, if you're always just testing and the example that we gave for CrossFit, you may only see ring muscle ups in a workout. Let's say you go to an affiliate or you're just kind of doing a group program once every, 12 to 15 training sessions. Yeah. And every time you do it, it's in an AMRAP or a rounds for time where you're staring at the rings after a couple of reps because you can't do any more.
Right.
And that is a really poor way of actually developing an athlete. So then you go an entire year where every time ring muscle ups come out, you're staring at the rings after the first round. Whereas you could do what Connor just mentioned and say, hey, we're going to break these down. This is your training session today where we're going to just do 1 unbroken times 20 reps, 2 unbroken times 10 sets, rest, and then do it again, whatever, and build up your capacity to actually do bigger sets. And then when you get to JT doing 7 by 5, now he can go to those workouts in the 15-minute AMRAP. He can actually crush it. The other thing I think is really important too is most people love testing because it feels like you're getting a lot of work done.
Yes.
But if you can't do the skill, you're not getting a lot of work done. So 1, you're just staring at the rings. And then 2, you're not even getting like good conditioning in.
Right.
So it'd be better off taking a step back, working on the ring muscle ups, putting them back in, and then you actually can get conditioning in that workout.
Exactly.
Yeah. Back to what you said, there were 2 things in terms of like trying to help people stay on progression or buy into taking these, let's say, patterns and then breaking them down into parts and then coming back day after day and hitting those. I think I do like to use sports analogies, and I learned this from you, Brandon, because I've heard it before, but you always go back to it, just talking about football game, right? And then practice and the differences in it. But you could use it with someone who like basketball and a shooting percentage, right? Like every day when Steph Curry comes into the gym, he may have days where he's hitting 75, 80% of his threes, right? He still has off nights, right? He still has days where things just don't click and those finer motor unit recruitment patterns are just off a little bit, right? And he's just not there. And so you're going to have days like that. Yeah. So that's the first thing I would say would be just expect that. That's normal. The other thing it helps is just, I mean, Foster talks about this all the time, right? Just set expectations beforehand. Like if you have someone who has to get stronger and they like have a big gap in their strength, you need to be upfront with them about like, hey, you're going to come back for like, this may be a really long process, but if we can put 10 pounds on your back squat in 3 months, I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but if we can take that and expand it over the next year, you put 40 pounds on your back squat in a year and now we're right where we need to be.
Right.
So
100%.
Yeah, I think just set expectations and be okay with having some off days.
Yeah.
Man, I wish my off days were like Steph Curry's off days. I'd be so good. He's still draining them from half court.
Yeah.
You know, that's a really good takeaway. I think I like going back to other sports because they're truly professionals at what they do. Like obviously Steph's the best at what he does, or any other professional sport. They're still doing training and testing, right? Yeah. They're doing scrimmages, full speed scrimmages. I think about college playing football. We scrimmaged maybe once a week and leading up to the season, but the rest of the time was focusing on footwork and hand placement and how I block, running a route, making sure everything was dialed in so that when we got to the game, we felt really good about what we were doing. And then it just became like second nature for us.
100%.
And that's what training should be. It is ups and downs. Like, did I like having to block the 275-pound lineman? No, like that sucks, but it got me better so that when I was in the game, I could like actually compete.
Yeah. 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 It makes me think of another sports analogy. I really wanted to dunk before my senior year of high school. It was like my number one goal. And I ended up doing it before I even got into my junior year, because I think that how most people will approach that is like, okay, I'm just going to practice dunking. That's how we do it in CrossFit. It's like, I need to get better at this open workout. I'm just going to keep practicing the open workout. It's like, you're not going to get better that way. So I really broke down that in like the entire mechanics of like, what do I need to do to become a better jumper? Is it my hamstrings? Is it my quads? Is it my calves? What do I need to train? Is it my approach? Is my one left leg weaker than my right? And just getting used to that, right? And training that over and over and over again, and still practicing dunking. Like, I think that's important, like practicing the skill, but also like breaking it apart and saying, okay, well, where are the areas that are actually holding me back a lot? So
yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. Yeah. So if we're talking about testing, kind of go back to that just for a second, because I think most people, they love to test, but then they get into maybe a true like one-on-one program, and then there's testing, and then we train for a while, and then we retest, and people don't like that like idea of retesting. Why is that important for the athlete to do a true, hey, we test something, we train for a while, and then we retest?
Yeah.
I mean, this may be not controversial, but I would just say, because there's nowhere to hide when you retest, right? Like athletes, and I think that freaks them out a little bit, right? Yeah. And from a coach's standpoint, it also puts a lot of accountability on us. Like if I'm going to take an athlete, I'm going to have them do some testing period, then I'm going to run them through 2-3 month off season or whatever it may be of a phase of training. And then I'm going to come back to some of those tests and they don't see improvement. Yeah. Like, okay, I did something wrong, right? Or maybe you did something wrong. And I mean, we all have also had, you have to add the caveat in there that there are days where you just have bad days. And sometimes that is sometimes why I will train things for 3 months with people and I actually won't retest with them, right? Like I'll hold off on maybe one piece. There'll be other pieces, but if it's something like a 1RM snatch, you guys know that some days you come in and it's hitting and you're good. And then you have other days where it's just like, I can hit 135. And for the past 5 weeks, I've hit 225 every day. That stuff, it really does just happen. But there's nowhere for them to hide when that 5K row comes up and you've done 8 weeks of 5K, row progressions or whatever it may be. And you know how much it's going to hurt, I think is the thing. Like if you really test something, there is a mental element there of like, you've suffered, you've gone into that dark hole. Okay. Can I, bring myself back there and work up the energy to go back into that dark hole?
Yeah. I mean, there's nowhere to hide mentally either.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the hardest part for me. It's like knowing how hard it's going to, or how bad it's going to hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's super important for the athlete to retest, is because that actually gives them a win, right? Of like, hey, all the training that you've just been putting in, that's so monotonous, like you can finally PR. Like this is why we just did all of this for. And I think it's important for us too, as coaches, to say, hey, did what we just do work, right? Like, did it work or did we just fail at it? Because I think a lot of times we'll finish this 8-week cycle and then like, oh, none of that worked.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's another thing we didn't address. And I tell my clients this all the time. It's like, the more you communicate with me, the better. Because if you're not letting me in on even like life stress that's happening and you know that retesting week is coming up and you're just like, oh yeah, this is the most stressful week for me at work. I'm like, we would have never retested. Like that would have not even been in the plan. So I think like really over communicating, like me communicating that to my athletes has been crucial, because we're not going to plan a retest if I know you're in a mental space of like, retesting week is just like not going to go good.
Yeah. You bring up a really good point though. And I know that this podcast isn't for coaches, but if there's anyone out there who is a coach, if you want to continue to grow and like improve as a coach, you need to be okay with doing some of those retests and things not going according to plan, because that's going to teach you what not to do in the future moving forward. And like, you're always learning from that stuff. You're taking information from, like you said, they could have had a bad night's sleep the night before and then it's just thrown off. Okay. That's fine. Right. But if you have those where they hit and it seems like everything's going well and then they get to a retest and they don't improve, I can actually learn a lot from that as a coach. Right.
Yeah. So I usually just delete those progressions out of my spreadsheet. Like, that didn't work. That's so funny. All right. So like to wrap it up then, I think for those listeners out there that maybe want to kind of change their training around, the way that we think about testing is to help us identify the limitations. We break everything down, even to a pacing. Maybe it's a pacing limitation or a movement limitation you may have. I would highly encourage all of you athletes to start thinking about it that way. If you have something you struggle with, test it, get those numbers on the board, identify the limitations, and then training is the opportunity to actually use those kind of like parts of the pattern, so to speak, all the things that you may be limited by, actually try to progress those and then use the retest as an opportunity to see if you actually got better.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's great.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Awesome.
See you guys.
See ya.